Hey guys, Martin and Iggy here from the Weekend Warrior. As you can tell, we're out at Booker's Outpost. We're here just for one of our normal working weekends, and we figured while we're here on location, we're going to do a bare bones, entry-level, basic gear bag breakdown for our Milsim. So an all-nighter with the intention, obviously the hope that you're going to play the whole night. We've got gear on the floor for you. The one thing we don't have here is a food and cooking system. We're going to do that at home while we're not out in the bush. All right, so let's get into the studio. All right, so here we are in the studio, on location at Booker's Outpost. We've got an explosion here of essentially Iggy's 24-hour, 2-day Milsim setup, minus food. We will do food in more detail at a different time. But so what we're going to do is we've got it all laid out to save pulling it out. Iggy's going to run through the bulk of his stuff and I'll add a couple of my additions in there. And yeah, but as we said on the way in, this is basically a bare minimum of what to carry and a basic sleep system. But having said it's a minimum, it's kind of our also almost maximum. Anything more than that as a sleep system becomes overkill. And obviously you can embellish on a few other things here, but the more you pack, the more you carry. So what we'll do is we'll try and go relatively quickly. We'll run through basically what Iggy carries. He doesn't actually have 10 kilos worth of plates in his plate carrier. He doesn't carry it at all. But we'll run through what he carries and then what he would have stashed in his pack that wouldn't be carried all day.
The
Cool?
10 kilos is just free fizz. That's all right.
Is it?
Yeah.
And bruised shoulders.
Yeah. Just, exercise.
Yes, for crazy people. All right.
All right, so without further ado, starting from the very bottom here, this is obviously the front of my plate carrier. And at the very bottom in this dump pouch, I carry my first aid kit. Side here would be bandages, things like a snake bandage, everything from a basic first aid kit, which is actually unopened.
Yeah.
But it's got band-aids, it's got your usual bandages.
Some alcohol wipes.
And also I've got the Israeli bandage there. And the most important one obviously is your snake bite bandage. That all goes in one of your pouches. As long as it's on your person, that's fine, because it needs to stay with you all the time. Martin has some extra things in his, which I don't, at the moment, carry in mine.
For me, it's mostly just, the main one for me is antihistamine. I get pretty itchy skin and stuff, so if I scratch on a tree or something like that, it can end up getting itchy and sore. So I do generally carry a couple of antihistamines with me. Hydrolyte is a huge one out in the bush, obviously, particularly in Australia. Water, which we'll cover, but hydrolyte helps you in many other ways. You can get the longer hydrolyte tubes, which unless you're feeding your whole section, your whole squad, your whole team, you're not going to go through 12 tablets. You can get the mini ones like down at the front there, but my personal actual preference is the sachets of powder, purely because once you've had one or two out of those tubes of hydrolyte, they do shake around and rattle. The negative of the sachets of the powder is I have had them in a pocket or in a bag that actually got wet, and then the powder actually absorbed moisture and was ruined. So the tube of the tablets is better until you eat some and then they become noisy. I also tend to use, I call it ball powder, rash powder on my legs, because my legs do rub together pretty bad, so it stops rashing and stuff like that, but that's purely personal. Now with the Panadol and the ibuprofen, paracetamol and ibuprofen, I would only carry maybe 3 tablets of each, but that's mostly for longer than a 12-hour game. I wouldn't bother carrying painkillers for a 12-hour because if I can't get through it, I shouldn't be doing it. That's more so if we're doing a night system where if you've stretched your legs or overstretched or whatever throughout the day, and let's say you lay down for an hour at night and you have a bit of a sleep, you're going to wake up achy. So the Panadol and the ibuprofen just helps keep you going in that sense. I personally do not recommend what a lot of players do, and that's eat some ibuprofen before you even start an event to try and stop getting achy during an event. I don't really like that idea, but if it's what works for you, then go for it. So that generally for Iggy all fits down in here, plus
Inside here I do have a surprise grenade.
surprise grenade.
just for that moment. That's the only one I carry, and I've not used it yet.
Yes.
Moving on from there, I've got obviously the mag pouches. I carry 4 magazines, and I only ever tend to fill 2, unless I know I'm going to advance to a contact, then I'll fill all 4. The reason for that is if you fill all 4, or even we recommend actually if you carry a maximum of 8, so more in your pack.
Or on your belt.
The reason for that is if you fill them all and then they dry, by the time you get to fire them, you first of all you lose accuracy and then range, and it'll just clog up your barrel and you just have a nightmare and you end up hit. So keep it to 2 as a kind of quick reaction. And then obviously if you are going to go on a mission and you know you're going to need more ammo, then obviously fill up the others. Moving up from that, we've got just a little pouch up here, and inside here I've got my compass. I keep my compass inside a foam kind of pocket. That's just to stop it from being damaged. And the good thing about this compass is obviously it doesn't run out of battery. However, if you do prefer or have one on your watch, that's awesome. By all means use that. I just like that because I know it's there, and it's always just, I don't need any maintenance on it. It just sits there.
Particularly the battery thing. If you're one of these people that likes to track your steps or put it in tactical mode and track where you've been so you can look super cool on Google later on, that will smash batteries. So that battery doesn't die. These batteries die. I tend to, if I use a compass, I tend to use my watch, but I still carry my basic one.
Moving on from that, I've just got a rubber knife here. Obviously you don't have to have one at all. I just like it for the extra challenge if I can get close enough to those people. And then that takes us over to the back. Now my main pouch, 75% of it is used for my bladder, which is my 3 litres that you have to carry. As a bare minimum when you leave the safe zone in our events, and that's the case for most events.
Minimum 3 litres, yeah.
And I do have, as you can see further down there, extra bottles. Ideally I try and carry as much water as I can on me, but if failing that I put it in my larger pack, which for reference, my larger pack I'll carry into the field, and then I'll ditch it as soon as I can to then become, functional, should we say, and being able to play throughout the day, because there's no way you can play throughout the whole day carrying everything.
There's no need to be carrying your sleep system through the day, or all your water through the day, or your dinner through the day. You only need that come nighttime. So, as Iggy said at the start of the game, or as early as you can, once your HQ or your base, your operating base is set up, stash your bag somewhere, come back to it if you need to throughout the day, but don't even attempt to try and carry it. It doesn't make sense to try and carry all your gear for the whole day when it's completely unnecessary.
You won't have a good time.
No.
And you could injure yourself.
Well, and events have literally ended 15 hours early, because more than that, 20 hours early, because people tried to carry their gear the whole time.
Yeah.
So
just don't.
So those extra bottles down the front, that gives Iggy a total of 5.4 or whatever it is litres.
Yep.
I reckon that's still not enough personally. I would have ideally probably 8 small bottles worth in here, or a couple of bigger bottles, because if you're not carrying it for much of your time, you might as well have more in there. Particularly if you're going to have a food set up that needs a bit of water, or make a coffee or something. Bearing in mind 2 cups of coffee is, at least 1 and a bit of those bottles of water gone. So, tea. Sorry for the Englishman. Welshman. All right, little pack.
So my little pack here is just a basic admin pouch, and inside there I have, we're actually demonstrating Marty's toolkit, but I have a little toolkit. I've got a spare tiny little torch.
And your normal torch will be in there too.
And I actually normally carry a smaller bottle of Bushman's or equivalent in there, and it's just for anything to make my life a little bit easier out in the field. And moving over to the other side, I've got a dump pouch here, and obviously a dump pouch is designed for your magazines, but for me it's my snack pouch. I put in things like fruit, lollies, anything I can just shove in there and just nibble on throughout the whole day. And it also just, in those times when you're waiting for an ambush or something, and you just reach in, you're like, oh, that's nice. Just a little bit morale pouch, I call it. Obviously,
depending what's in it, it could be a stomachache pouch.
Yeah.
Don't fill it full of junk that's just going to give you bad stomach, give you the shits. You don't want chocolate and stuff that's going to melt.
Oh no.
So your ideal is your kind of, preferably a homemade kind of trail mix with all your kind of favorites. Avoid too much sugar. Obviously you need energy, but avoid the maximum sugar and all that kind of stuff.
So obviously there's a lot more room still in my large pack here. Inside here what I have is a poncho, because like now it doesn't look like it's going to rain at all, but in 12 hours time, I don't know, that might change.
But the other thing a poncho is also shade. If you don't have your sleep system handy, let's say you're a K away, and if you're going to be hauled up for an hour or something, there's nothing stopping you draping a poncho over something and creating some shade.
The other thing I carry inside here usually is a spare map, and
radio battery.
Any other bits of, if I know I'm going to be out for a while, I might take my lunch or equivalent from my food area and just shove that in there. As I said, it's just useful to have something large on your back to carry hands-free. And the other thing I'd recommend carrying, and I tend to always have on me, is my spare battery for my blaster.
Battery blaster, radio, so battery spare batteries, radio spare battery backup for your phone, spare torch. The other thing that I would suggest carrying on you, not necessarily all day, but certainly from early afternoon onwards, is clear safety glasses. So if you're wearing tinted safety glasses throughout the afternoon, as soon as that goes dark, you're going to be completely pitch black. So if you've got your clears in here and you don't come back here at dusk, you don't have your clears. So I'd suggest having your clear safety glasses at least from the afternoon phase. If you can't guarantee you're going to get back there at lunchtime-ish, have them on your backpack the whole time. Then you've always got your clears on you for when you need it.
Moving on from that, we always recommend carrying a dead rag. Now this is internationally recognized in Airsoft and gelball all over the world as your dead rag.
Dead, not just hit, but dead, yeah.
And it's always worth just having one of them. You can even have it in your pocket. It doesn't really have to be in here. I carry mine in here because all my gear just sits in there.
I carry mine in a shoulder pocket on my shirt.
Our events, we have bandages which we issue to you before you start the event. Because, well, we don't expect everyone to just have all these different wonderful colours that we use in our events. So we issue them to you. But yeah, and also just keep them, then you've got one. Other events tend to use more flash equipment, such as the tourniquet here. Good bit of kit. And well, I treat myself.
It's not a real one, just so you know. It is a Chinese device. Training one. So
yeah.
I wouldn't try and actually stop someone with a gel blaster hit with a tourniquet because you might end up lose their leg.
No. Please don't.
Something else, obviously Iggy did mention a small can of bug spray. These things are really handy, depending, of course, where you are. We have had mozzies here at Booker's for our events, but we haven't generally had mozzies here for when we're just here for the weekend. This one's a clip on your belt one. So I know guys at Royal Raids of Gabet last year were carrying these on their person or on their pack around their harbour area and kept the mozzies away, which were great. So this is just literally available from Bunnings. Just a clicky cling, couple of pads and a liquid thing on the bottom. So really, really handy. Keep the mozzies away. Got it supposedly about a 20-foot radius, whatever that means. But of course it's downwind only, so really handy. All right, so that's pretty much on your person.
Yep. The only other thing I'd add to that would be, obviously, it's optional, but a lot of people like to carry a belt. Obviously, the belt will hold your pistol and your pistol magazines and stuff. You can also have it to carry your spare 4 mags for your rifle. Even put your med kit on that, so then you can take this off and you're a lot lighter.
So one thing with belts that I kind of learned, I just learned through experience, I guess. I used to put too much on my belt, and I'm a guy, so my belt doesn't go up around my waist. It goes kind of just above my ass crack. So I found that the heavier my belt is, obviously the tighter it has to be, otherwise it was always falling down. The tighter it is, the more achier I got in my legs, and it just got uncomfortable. So these days I have less and less on my belt, more and more on my gear or in my bag or in my pockets, because my trousers don't really make my body ache. And that's what, trousers have pants have 35 pockets for. But I would definitely suggest a belt with some form of pouch options, even if it's just, say, a dump pouch, like a quick go-to that might not get used, but you use it if you need to. The other ideal thing for a dump pouch is rubbish. So what do you do when you drink a 600ml bottle of water? Obviously, we just chuck it on the floor, like people I found over here this morning. There's 3 or 4 water bottles from last event here. Squish them up, put them in a dump pouch on your belt, dead easy. Pistol, what do we think about gel ball pistols these days, Joanne?
In urban, they're great fun.
So indoor, when you're shooting it a lot, great fun, work really well. But if you haven't shot it for 3 or 4 hours,
it's just a weight around your hips.
Yeah.
I tend to never take it on a Milsim, unless I'm representing, a character or something that needs to have a pistol.
Yeah. That's gel ball. Airsoft.
Oh, different.
Different story. Obviously this is a bit of an off subject, but pistol in airsoft can still have 30, 40, 50 meter range. And if you're carrying a bolt action or a DMR or something with a minimum engagement, you have to carry a pistol. Different story. Gel ball, where your BBs don't dry out in airsoft, your gels dry out in gel ball, and then all of a sudden it just doesn't work.
Yep.
Or if it does fire, it's just a complete dud. So I do not bother with a holster or a pistol in my gel ball Milsim rig anymore. All right, so
moving on to the sleeping system.
Yeah.
So what we've got here is just a basic thin roll mat, just to get you off that ground, because this is, as you can see around us in our studio, it's quite rough. Imagine trying to sleep on these things.
You can literally use a $5 yoga mat from Kmart.
Yep.
It's just a bit chunky when carrying it, but every pack normally has provisions under the bottom or the top to carry it.
The choice I've gone for here is just that little cushion of air, because what it also does is it provides that little bit of insulation
yeah.
from the ground itself.
Which in all honesty, even in winter here, isn't a huge factor. Whilst the air temp might get down here, we've had -5 here in the middle of winter, but our events, I think the lowest we got to was 7 or 8. The ground is not going to be 1 degree, so you're not actually going to get overly cold through the dirt. If you're laying on concrete, different story, but you definitely want something between, you need a ground sheet, ideally, and then something to sleep on. It's not pretty overly pleasant just laying straight on the ground.
No. The sleeping bag I've got here is a very thin one, perfect for this time of year. Obviously winter time, I'd probably upgrade it for something a little thicker, a little warmer.
Yes, depending on how long you're potentially planning on sleeping.
True.
So if it's a 1-night event, so Royal Flush is a 29-hour event. We're starting at 9 a.m, finishing at 2 p.m. It's entirely up to you if you play all night, as in stay in field all night. We want you to, that's the whole idea of it. But if you're only planning on having a 20-minute power nap here and a 20-minute power nap there, maybe an hour on rotation, you don't actually really need a sleeping bag.
No.
Chuck a hoodie on, put your poncho on, wrap yourself up in a ground sheet, and you will probably be perfectly warm enough for a little while. Unless, of course, it's really shit weather and it's wet and windy, and then you're going to need another layer.
Yeah.
That's just obvious.
The other thing I've got here is an inflatable pillow.
Luxury.
That's just because you don't have to have it at all.
Definitely, for sure, if you like your comforts, bring a little pillow. That, of course, is inflated, will roll up pretty small as well. So
just down there at the bottom, in the desert camouflage, is an example of a ground sheet. But we've got one set up in the background here. But just wanted to show you how small you can make it. So it literally just doesn't take much room in your pack at all. Moving all the way back up here, right in front of Martin, we've got a schmag here. So that's just useful for anything and everything, really.
The main thing is literally what we both did was, if you are wanting to have a lay down, or even just sit and lean against a tree for half an hour at night, or even just during the day, just this over your face just keeps bugs away. And put it over your face, so if you just sat leaning against a tree, if there is someone looking at you through nods, they might not be sure if you are a person or not because you're a green clothy thing, and it just may work as a little bit of a camouflage for you.
It buys you that extra second. Oh.
Yeah. So pretty much the last thing on the mat here really is his actual rifle. His long boy A4, whatever it is. So the most important thing, in my honest opinion, with Milsim is not maximum feet per second, is not fast rate of fire, it's just pure reliability. You want something that you can carry 2 batteries and change a battery halfway through the event. If you're running a MOSFET, you will find it will use your battery even if you're not shooting because it's always registering that it's turned on and using power. Our field limit is 350 feet per second. I reckon there's no point going near that. 300 feet per second, keep the stress off the internals, and it would work. 300 is every bit as accurate and range as 350. The limit is the gel, not the gun. Couple of batteries, have a sling so that you don't have to carry it. And yeah, obviously your choice of what style of rifle, but also on rifle, gels. So a bit of a catch-22 with Milsims or military type events is you could either shoot all gels or you could shoot all the gels. At some events, I remember at some events I've barely shot any, and yet at last year's Raids of Gabet and also Viper's Fury the year before, some of our team members, I remember them commenting saying, "Can't believe how many gels I shot. I've never shot so many gels at a Milsim."
Well, they had to grow more.
They had to grow more gels, correct? Yeah. So we've always wanted our events to be what we actually named Battle Sim. We want you to be battling and fighting as much as possible in the Milsim environment. But obviously there will be times where you might be hunting someone or being hunted or just patrolling or on security of a fob and not shoot for hours. But my suggestion would be at least 1 pack of gels, which is about 6,000 gels. That'll be a 2-litre bottle. And ideally have more ready to grow if possible. Or if you don't mind sacrificing a $7 to $10 pack of gels, chuck them out if they don't get used within weeks after the event. Grow 2 packs, have them ready. Whether you have them in your gear or whether you have to bug back to the safe zone to grab them, I don't know. But you don't want gels to be a limit. But remember, the more gels you shoot, the more batteries you need. So if you're going to shoot heaps of gels, you need to have another battery again. Now the actual bag itself, do you want anything about the bag itself? What's this? Is this an AliExpress cheapie straight off Temu?
Yeah. So the biggest thing is making it waterproof. So inside here, I've got I call it a canoe bag. And basically they're bags within bags. I know that's crazy, but if it is an absolute downpour, the last thing you want to do to break your morale is have wet kit inside. Because at least if you've got a setup like this, and you've done that and it's bucketing down the rain, if you've got a nice dry kit in here, at least you can hopefully go into your sleeping bag in a nice dry pair of pants and a t-shirt. And then obviously it's cold, wet and dry next morning. Put your dry ones, if you haven't been attacked in the night and got them wet, back in here and get your wet kit back on. The reason for that is when you obviously sleep, you lose a lot of body temperature, and you want to try and keep yourself dry whilst you're sleeping. And it's as I said earlier, it's just all about morale. But the most important thing is keeping your kit dry. So having a canoe bag inside, I've got all these different pockets here.
And even if you can have a couple of spare dry bags, we've got food in one over there. This lot came out of a bag like that one. A couple of spare dry bags, even if they're not being used, they weigh bugger all, but they can also be quick shove bags for if you're needing to shove stuff in, or if something does get super wet, you don't want to put it in a dry bag with another bag, put it in another wet bag. Keep stuff wet away from everything else. The bag itself, this one's not a big one, it's not a little one. I wouldn't really want to see people carrying any bigger.
No.
And you would probably struggle with much smaller, although all this will fit in there really easily. Sorry, I'm just standing up, my legs are going to sleep. But again, the bigger the bag, the heavier it is. So a lot of your cool modern day stuff is very light. But yeah, so the bag itself is obviously the main transport thing. for most of your event. That's home.
Yeah, that is your home for the event. But the most important thing is getting to your HQ, getting it set up, ditching this there. What I've done when I've led my section before is we didn't want to set up anywhere where that we could be tracked in the night, so we hid all of our main bags under a camo net, disappeared, half buried in the ground, so people wouldn't find them, and we came back to them probably 12 hours later.
And you only set up your camp at your harbour area either during the night or just before dark.
Yeah.
Don't set it up during the day, because then it's really easy to find and then the enemy know where you are. If this is still a bag, it can be moved. If it's now a sleep system, it can't be moved easily if you need to bug out and change your camp location before it becomes a camp location.
Get yourself as light as possible, as quick as possible, so you can enjoy the day, get through the day, and then you know you've got all your creature comforts to a degree for the night.
All right.
But yeah, that's about it.
Should we have a little look at the hoochie setup, and we'll go from there?
Cool. Come this way.
All right. Alrighty, so this is what I would call the maximum and also the minimum of a sleep system if you're needing a roof shelter. Obviously, if there's zero or little chance of rain, you don't even have to worry about a roof. You could just literally have a ground sheet and you could wrap it over you if you wanted a bit of shelter. This is nothing fancy. This is probably a $30 ripstop hoochie from the internet somewhere. The ground sheet is legit 2 Kmart $8 ground sheets sewn together in the middle. So 2 fairly short ones sewn together. Now they're both ripstop, which is pretty important when you may end up laying on junk. The last thing you want to do is just tearing it up for no reason. And it doesn't have to be expensive. But basically, obviously on here you would ideally have your roll mat and your sleeping bag, or just your roll mat or whatever. Now, what I did obviously when setting up here is, the ideal is to find a couple of trees. Now I do have a couple of poles just rolled on the floor there. If you don't have trees, a couple of different poles and then guy rope them out, so it's like a very basic little swag kind of setup. But essentially the military type is to do a bunch of knots all the way along your rope so that you've got different tie points all the way. This hoochie has obviously got tethers on all the corners and holes everywhere, so really easy to set up. But basically all the way across tree to tree is paracord, and I just use it with the loops. It's just a carabiner. Now this isn't tethered in any way. This can slide. It's just got a little bit of its own weight holding it in place. Me personally, I wouldn't really recommend using, like I've got on the corners, really small cheap carabiners, because if someone trips over this, they'll just break a carabiner. So these are actually rock climbing carabiners that are just retired from my years ago of climbing, and they weigh probably no more than a cheap carabiner. They're super strong and super light. So the actual tent is on paracord, and then I do have, actually it's bungee stretchy cord as the main tether. So again, if someone pulls on it, or if it's really windy, you're not going to tear your tent clean in half. So the main rope is the paracord, but then the main tension is a little bit of thingy. Now in here I do have a cheap carabiner. For the main reason is, having said I don't want them to break, I also don't want to tear up my roof if someone does walk across here, so it might break my carabiner, so be it. So essentially, both ways across the tree, it's just looped around and hooked into itself. Fortunately I managed to find a couple of trees out here that are tethered out. This one here, I just found a bit of a log. I would not recommend tent pegs. The main reason would actually be for people thinking of noise hammering them in and pulling them out. For me, it's actually, they're more of a trip hazard. Stand on it, skewer straight through your foot if it goes wrong. So avoid tent pegs if you can. Paracord as low to the ground as you can for the side ones for trips. Now, the obvious would ideally be glow in the dark or lit up ropes, but then of course everyone can see them. So my ground sheet, basically, I set it up at home width-wise. So I've actually got my ground sheet tethers essentially to the corners of my roof. So that does 2 things in my head. One, just makes it really easy. And 2, if it's pouring down with rain, unless heaps of water gets on my ground sheet, it's actually kind of off the floor. I just buggered that up. Kind of off the floor, so it's already not a submarine. Obviously, once I get in there, it's on the floor. Now, exactly the same at the other end. I do have bungee, stretchy on all 4 corners. Haven't got anything in the middle here because this will generally be where I get in. Jump in here. Of course, you could go in the end if you wanted to, but there's plenty of slack here. And that's pretty much it. I do have a really cheap little red light on here for if I need to identify it for any reason, but obviously I won't have that turned on the majority of the time because people can see it. And people can see red light from a long way away. So honestly, apart from the old retired carabiners, that's probably maximum $100 sleep system. My personal roll mat, I don't use a foam one like that. I actually use a really small little inflatable mat. For good or bad, it's actually easy to blow up and set up. It's a pain in the ass to deflate and roll back up. So a bit of a catch-22. In all honesty, if I'm on a property that's only 400 acres like Booker's, I would probably carry a $5 yoga mat so I can roll it out, roll it back up really quick, really easy. Done. Cool. Hope that pretty much rounds it off for everyone. We will do food at another time. We'll tack it on the end here. And any questions, let us know. Embellish it, add to whatever you want. I ain't no professional. Iggy's a lot more professional at this kind of stuff than me. He's played Milsims and stuff for a lot longer than I have, and he's got military background. But a lot of it has to be common sense. Simple as that. All right, let's wrap it up. We'll see you here May 3rd and 4th, or 4th and 5th, whichever it is, 2025 for Royal Flush. Tickets go on sale January 10. See you then. Thanks, guys.